Black Lives Matter, much needed movement, or was it all just a scam for money? Hello, my name is Nissy Tee and welcome to Watchman News, breaking the breaking news. Now, before we get into anything else, if you remember, just last week I spoke about a young man who went missing right here in the United Kingdom. Richard Okorogaye was a student and the only child of his mother, Evidence Joel. And sadly, shortly after our report, it was indeed confirmed that a body that was found in a lake in Epping Forest was in fact his. There is still no clear indication of Mr. Okorogaye's cause of death, nor is it clear as to whether there was any foul play. However, much like everybody else, his mother, Miss Joel, did voice in the midst of her pain that none of it made any sense and that she was very confused. We will, of course, keep you updated, but in the meantime, our hearts, our prayers, and our thoughts go out to Miss Joel and the entire family during this tragic time. Riots and protests have erupted across America after 20-year-old Daunte Wright was fatally shot by police earlier this week after what was supposedly a routine traffic stop. The Minnesota National Guard were deployed in the area after violent clashes between protesters and the police erupted after an officer shot the young man just 10 miles from where Derek Chauvin had his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, which ultimately led to his death and a wave of protests across the globe thereafter. According to reports, there was a warrant out for Daunte's arrest due to there being allegations that he was a gang member. In the midst of an altercation, it is said that Officer Kim Potter discharged her weapon, and this really is the part that completely blows my mind. According to a statement made by Minnesota Police Chief, Miss Potter accidentally shot Mr. Wright because she intended to reach for her taser instead of her gun. Now, according to Daunte's mother, she said that her son called her when he was being pulled over and she heard scuffling before the call ended. When she called back, she said that his girlfriend told her that Daunte Wright had been shot. Since then, a citywide curfew has been issued by Brooklyn Center Mayor Mike Elliott until Monday. Though we are yet to know the exact details of what has now been ruled as a homicide, there are a few things that have been stated. According to reports, Daunte Wright was pulled over by police. Once police discovered that there was a warrant for his arrest, there was an attempt to arrest Daunte Wright, which is when he tried to get back into his vehicle. This is when Officer Potter then went on to shoot at the vehicle, and after the car drove a few more blocks, it crashed. Paramedics did attend the scene and try to save his life, but Daunte Wright was pronounced dead at the scene. Now, this is where we have to start looking at everything in context. Before absolutely everything, someone has, of course, died. And to those people that see this as an opportunity to loot, in all honesty, let me make something very, very clear. You make me feel sick. This is still someone's son, a boyfriend, a brother, a cousin, a human being who has actually left behind a 1-year-old child who will now never know what it's like to grow up with a father. Now, that will and should always be addressed first. Now, having said that, number one, there was a warrant out for his arrest. And if he did indeed try to get back into the car, as a police officer, what do you do? Do you sit there and wait to see if that person is going to go back into that car and draw out a weapon like a gun and shoot you first? Because I'm sure most, and I say most because we don't know the intention of all police officers, and I refuse to make blanket statements, but I'm sure that most police officers don't wake up thinking, yeah, do you know what I'm going to do today? I'm going to go out there and I'm going to kill somebody. Officer Potter probably has a family of her own, and in that moment she had to make a split-second decision, something that most of us wouldn't even be able to do, but a split-second decision that could mean that she may not be able to go home to see her own family, perhaps her husband or even her children, if she didn't have to guess what happened to her next. However, we do have to point out number two. Something that does have to be addressed is How on earth does the story make any sense? If it's being said that she went to draw her taser, why on earth would you draw your taser and discharge it at a moving vehicle? Because I highly doubt that the guy was first shot, then got back into the vehicle and drove off. Or at the very least, if she did indeed fear for her life and thought that he was going back to get a gun from that car, let's just say, why wouldn't your first reaction be to discharge your gun? If this really is a life and death situation, you do whatever is necessary to protect yourself. And a taser against a gun doesn't seem plausible at all. But number 3, something that also needs to be understood is that every single one of these cases has to be looked at individually. And I know that people may not like this, but it is the truth. Every single case has to be looked at on a case-by-case basis. Now, has America had and still has a huge race problem? Absolutely. Does America continue to have a big issue with police brutality? Absolutely, undeniably. But what we can't do, especially from those within the Black community, is that we can't always react in the same way. The truth of the matter is, no one should ever die. And again, this does not take away from the fact that someone's life was taken. A young man that had a whole life to live. He had so much more that he could have done. We do not take away from the fact that that is the case. However, if he indeed did resist arrest or attempt to get back into the vehicle, let me ask you this question one more time. What would you do? Now, this is not just a black or white issue. This speaks to a number of issues, including 1, training that police get. Do enough officers have extensive training to adequately deal with these type of scenarios that quite literally could mean life or death? It is also a question of the relationship that the public have with the police. Now, it was alleged that he was, in fact, a criminal, someone that was in a gang and that was alleged to have been active in gang activity. This all may be perhaps true. But was he trying to get away out of fear, knowing the stigma that surrounds police officers today and what often people call their shoot first, ask questions later policy, which has led to a number of unnecessary fatalities like that of Breonna Taylor? Then again, it also has to be asked, if someone responds this way, as an officer, what do you do? Is it not your responsibility to make sure that this person cannot put yourself or other people around you in harm's way? So to limit this conversation to black and white is to diminish the very fact that these things will never change because no one is actually able to dig into these nuances and provide solutions. But as always, this is never a monologue. This is a conversation that I want each and every one of you to be involved in. I want to hear from you. Do you believe that that officer had every right to draw out her weapon and do what she did? Do you believe that perhaps it was a black or white issue? Is it a case whereby officers are not trained or do not know how to respond or react to situations like this? Or are consequences consequences? If you live in America and choose to resist arrest or choose to go against what a police officer is saying to you, do you just have to live, or do your family have to live with the consequences of your actions? Now over to the UAE with a story that many people have not been speaking about for a while. Now, according to the UN, there continues to be worries about the safety of Princess Latifah, an Emirati and a member of the Dubai ruling family. Her father, Sheikh Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum, is the Prime Minister of the UAE. And it is said that this man, alongside his authorities, were the ones that have allegedly kept Princess Latifah in a villa that has been converted into a prison. In what seems like a secret recording that was sent to the BBC, Princess Latifah shares how she had been drugged and taken after trying to escape the UAE and her father. She details in these videos how all the windows have been barred and how she is scared for her life as she hasn't been told anything nor been given any medical help. It now seems that the secret messages have stopped and friends are now urging the UN to step in as they claim that they haven't heard anything or seen Princess Latifah since. The UAE have previously claimed that she is in fact safe and in the care of family. Now, they had also previously claimed that Princess Latifah actually suffers with bipolar disease. Ex-UN Wright envoy Mary Robinson previously described Latifah as a troubled young woman after meeting her in 2018. This was also the last time that Latifah had been seen in public at all. Now, since then, Miss Robinson has said that she was horribly tricked by the princess's family, saying that they convinced her that Latifah was in fact troubled and suffered once again with bipolar disease, hence her alleged episodes. Latifah's account of her capture and detention was revealed by her close friend, Tina Jahian, her maternal cousin Marcus Asabri, and campaigner David Hay, who are all behind the Free Latifah campaign. They say that they had finally decided to release these messages because they are still concerned about her well-being. According to BBC Panorama, they have independently verified these videos and findings, despite the fact that authorities in the UAE continue to deny these claims, with Princess Latifah's father claiming that this is just yet another attempt to smear his name and the royal family. While 2020 was filled with a number of different events, one of the biggest was probably the propelling of the Black Lives Matter movement that took place across the globe following the horrific murder of George Floyd. Protests, clashes, violence, and even looting erupt across America and across the globe as people screamed and went out onto the streets to declare Black Lives Matter. Now, Black Lives Matter is and was an organization that was started by 3 black women, Alicia Garza, Patrisse Cullors, and Opal Tometi, which, according to the Black Lives Matter website, was set up as a direct response to the tragic murder of Trayvon Martin and the acquittal of the officer who murdered him, George Zimmerman. That case was, in all honesty, a complete sham, with there being no doubt, at least in my mind, that the system was indeed broken. Now, these 3 women essentially started the organization for a number of reasons, but according to, again, their website, their aim is to work for a world where black lives are no longer systemically targeted for demise, and they say that the call for Black Lives to Matter is a rallying cry for all black lives striving for liberation. It is said that the organization raised over $90 million in 2020 alone, and it has been reported that almost a quarter of it was at least carved out. Now, whether or not these funds have actually been given is still unknown, but were carved down to be given to local chapters and organizations, many of which were led by black people from the LGBTQ community. Now, just a few days ago, however, reports began to flood social media and mainstream media platforms stating that one of the founders, Patrisse Cullors, had spent millions of dollars on homes that were bought in predominantly white neighborhoods. It has been reported that the self-proclaimed trained Marxist added 4 new homes to her property portfolio, with one costing over $1.4 million. A huge wave of backlash erupted from this, as expected, with a number of people accusing her of selling out, forgetting her roots, and essentially using the devastation of many families who have actually lost loved ones to police brutality as a way of making profit. Social media was on fire as people started to question, where on earth did all this money go? $90 million. Was it really assigned to the people it was meant to go to? Have schools or fundamental, essential public things for black people been built? Or have majority black communities been rebuilt at all? Now, those around Miss Cullors did, however, deny all of these claims, stating that Miss Cullors had never taken a salary up until recently because the organization was finally making enough money, and that she was also making money from deals that she had signed, for example, with Netflix, and books that she had written and was selling. It was also said that the homes that were bought are allegedly for a project to support people, black people, and not for her own personal use. But it doesn't seem like people are actually buying it, and in all honesty, neither am I. Now, let me address something once and for all, because the last time I chose to speak about BLM, people wanted to talk about me online, saying that I was some sort of problem, a coon, whatever it is that you might say, as I said that Black Lives Matter was connected to witchcraft. Now, this is why I say that people need to understand facts before they speak and look at the entire context aspects before they build a conclusion. But hey, we are in the age of social media, reality TV, and clickbait. So who actually does research anymore? But first things first, let me make something very, very clear. I conducted an interview with someone who stated that the BLM organization was connected to witchcraft. It didn't come out of my mouth. It was part of the interview that I conducted. This said person then brought me receipts, of which we showed you again on this very interview, which we will link in the description box below, of the BLM founders saying out of their own mouth that people may think that by hashtagging BLM, they're just sharing a message. But in fact, they're calling upon ancestors and spirits, so on and so forth. Again, you can watch this video back. It will be linked in the bio. We've also included a video in there of Mr. Abraham Hamilton III, the host of Hamilton Corner, who also addresses this point and a number of things that have been said, of which I will also be mentioning in this. Once again, please do check it out below for yourself to see exactly what has been said. Now, let me make something very, very clear to you. I may be black, I may be a woman, I may be from a very working class background, but let me tell you something. I am a Christian first. My faith goes above every single thing. Now, if I, as someone of faith, am hearing someone who runs an organization state that they call upon and conjure up their ancestors and spirits, and in quote, say that this is not just a social movement, this is also a spiritual movement, that's when I have every right to take a step back and say, hold on, wait a minute. Now, if they are openly telling me that this is not just about social issues, but it's now also about spiritual issues, and it does not align with my beliefs or what I stand for, once again, just like everybody else on this planet, I have every right to say, nope, I don't think I want to have a part of this. Now again, as I say the same thing week in, week out, I am not here to do what a lot of mainstream media does, which is ultimately to brainwash you and to tell you how or what to think. I come on here to pose questions that some people don't want to ask and to highlight things that may perhaps not be something that you would have even known about if we didn't bring it to the forefront. When I've spoken to a lot of people, especially those that happen to be Christians or even other people who are supporting the BLM movement, when I've spoken to them about this or even played these clips to them, they've all turned around and had the exact same reaction. Oh my gosh, I didn't know this. And that is where the issue lies. You can shout and scream and hashtag BLM all you want, as long as you are 110% sure of what you're screaming about and you're 110% okay with the messaging that goes alongside what it is that you are saying. If you're fine with that, absolutely fine. Go ahead with it. Do what you want to do, because again, you have every right to say and do what you want. However, the issue lies in the fact that if you decide in this day and age to question anything that goes against what people would consider to be woke ideals, or for example, the BLM movement, you're considered a coon or anti the work that they are doing. Let me make something else very, very clear to you. Do I believe that Black Lives Matter? I absolutely do. Do I believe in some things that might be said, i.e. things like white privilege? Now again, some people might not agree with me, but hey, I am allowed to do this one thing, have an opinion, and it's something that I refuse to apologize for. So yes, I do believe in some aspects and things that are mentioned about white privilege. However, I am also the same person that will question the motives of an organization behind a movement. Because, for example, prior to the blowing up of BLM, I went onto their website myself and read with my own two eyes what their aims were. Now, some of their aims included things like destroying the heteronormative family, i.e. the traditional family of which I believe holds society in place. And they also mentioned a number of other things that I wish, in all honesty, I still took a screenshot of in order to show you today. Because as soon as BLM blew up, and after a few things were being said about worrying and questionable things that were put on their website, I then revisited their website, and the entire website had been absolutely cleaned from top to bottom. bottom, and their messaging and the agendas of which that they had put up had been completely changed. Now that to me shows that they may well be a hidden agenda playing in the background while real people put themselves on the line with the risk of ending up dead or being arrested for what they believe is just them showing support of black people as a whole, who, by the way, I must say, have black people historically been targeted by police in disproportionate numbers? Absolutely yes. Have black people also been abused and then have to continue to live with the cyclical traumas of the effects of things like colonization, slavery, and imperialism? 110%. But my question is this: what if this is about so much more than just black or white? We've all gotten so emotionally wrapped up and invested, and we go round in the same cycles over and over again. Someone tragically dies, we get angry, we protest, we loot, then we carry on in the very systems we claim to hate, and then we do it all over again. Why is it that we are constantly fed with what I can only call at this point black trauma porn, showing black bodies constantly mutilated, hurt, or even slavery? I mean, how many slave movies do you know or have you watched? And I get it, it's important to acknowledge what we've been through, but do we actually think about or talk about the psychological damage caused by constantly reminding a group of people that this is all you were and all you continue to be? That because of this is exactly why you are where you are today. There is so much more to our history beyond slavery, and yet for black people, it seems to be the highlight of our existence as an ethnic group. And what does that do? It just creates and continues to create anger and resentment. And what then happens is that we continue in a cycle of violence within our own communities. I'm not even talking about outside our communities. I'm talking about all the anger that's built up within our communities. Just imagine living every single day always feeling like someone is out to get you. How do you flourish if that is your constant and consistent narrative? Now, some might turn around and say, but that's exactly how it feels. Especially for someone as a black individual living in America, that's how it feels, and that is the case. But what if this is their plan? I say they because that is what we often say. Their agenda, their plan, their aim to hurt us, their aim to kill us. What if that is their actual plan? To constantly make us fearful, so that we stay in a constant state of survival rather than what we should be doing, which is thriving. Listen, I have so many questions, and as long as I continue to have this space, and as long as I continue to have the thoughts and the mouth that I have, I will continue to ask them, even if it is unpopular and even if it goes against the status quo. But I say all of this to say quite simply, what we do today, quite literally, will determine the path and the future, not just for ourselves, but also for our children. And I don't know about you, but I don't want to live in a world, nor do I want my children to live in a world governed by nothing but fear and hatred. Black people are too scared to just exist because they're always afraid that someone is going to get them. Then we have white people who don't even know what to do with themselves anymore because they're always afraid of tripping up. Nor do I want to live in a world where every time a black person dies, we immediately attach it to the fact that they were black, which again ties in that dangerous notion that someone can literally be killed purely based on the color of their skin. Now, let me make something clear before some of you guys start running into the comments. Has it and does it happen? Yes, because we live in a crazy, disgusting world full of racists. That is something that we will not deny. But to make that the case for every single situation and circumstance, again, is not healthy for anybody, especially the young black girls or young boys who have to live with, exist with people of all different races and backgrounds. If there's anything I want you to do today, even if you haven't heard anything that I've said, is to do this. To ask yourself the question, what type of world do I want myself and maybe the future generations to live in? Because when I remember the likes of Martin Luther King Jr. and the speeches that were made, there were lines and things that he said that were so specific and particular. For example, I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, one day, right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. And I can't lie to you, that is the world that I want myself and my kids to live in. One of unity and understanding, not one filled up with more hatred and more trauma that we just continue to pass on from one generation to the next. But as always, I want you to leave a comment below and share your thoughts, whether you agree with me or you don't. This is a place where your opinion matters and will be heard. Where are we going as a human race? Where are we going as people? Are we regressing and going backwards, or are we actually moving forward? Are we even able to have conversations like this, like the one that has been had today? Or are we constantly in fear of being cancelled, hence why nobody is actually able to say what they mean and say it as they believe it? Let me know your comments below. I will definitely be reading. But once again, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you again next time.